Hello, are you exhausted yet?
I was going to say, do you sleep? It sounds like you are so busy doing so many amazing things, giving back to the community and sharing your message. So it's a pleasure to have you here. We're so excited to learn from you.
The answer is yes, I do sleep. I sleep a ton ever since I got sick and I learned how critical sleeping was. It is a huge focus. So I always get 8 hours of sleep a night.
Oh, that's so important. Sleep is amazing. I try to prioritize it as well. But we have so many great things to chat about. So let's just dive right in. So as we can see, you've had a long journey of healing from not one, but several GI conditions. Now you coach others, create content, create materials, how they can find their own way back to health and heal their gut. So I think, we want to hear everything about your journey from where you started to where you are now. It's probably a long story, but can you tell us how it began?
Yeah, it is a super long story. And I've told it several times. You can find it. And so I don't want to waste our time here, just going over all of it, but I will tell you how it all started. There's really nothing from my childhood that I can remember, except for I was always the child that was very lethargic a lot. I mean, my cousins would stay up all hours of the night and I would be snuggled into my sleeping bag, ready to go to bed at 8 p.m. But other than that, I was fine and healthy. But what happened was my freshman year of college, I went away. I went to school at the University of Minnesota, which was about an hour from where I grew up. And I went away to school and I was really stressed, just got out of a long heartbreak of a relationship. And I missed home, I missed family and friends. So there's a lot of stress there. But then I came down with some sort of illness. To this day, we don't really know what it was, but I was sick for a good 2 weeks, couldn't get out of bed, couldn't do anything. And I really was never the same after that. And this illness wasn't, it wasn't life-threatening or anything, but I got really bad tonsillitis. I was throwing up a lot. I was just sleeping 24/7. It was just probably some general illness that just completely knocked me out. And after that, I was never the same again. So I would spend the rest of my freshman year of college, thank God, in a dorm room all by myself because I could let out the smallest bit of air and my entire room would smell like a rotten egg. We talk about, kind of first symptoms that anyone might have or have remembered. And that was for sure by far mine, is that rotten egg smell. And I would just stay really sick throughout all of college. I was in and out of the hospital all the time because seemingly about every few months, I would get either strep throat, tonsillitis, or pharyngitis. Obviously, sometimes bacterial, sometimes not, but regardless, I was always on antibiotics. That was the solution back then and still today. So I did that up until my senior year of college. And that's when things, really kind of start turning because I had my tonsils out. They said that if you have your tonsils out, everything's going to be better. All pieces of your life are going to get better. You're not going to be sick anymore. And so I did. I had my tonsils out. But what I learned then and what I try to pass along to people all the time is that you can change one thing that's like the surface problem, the thing that plagues you and that you see and you deem to be the thing in your life. But if you're not addressing any of the underlying problems that came with it and what led you there to begin with, it's going to return. And so like everything else in life, I felt better for a little bit. To this day, I rarely get strep throat or anything like that, but stomach problems continued. And then for the next several years, and then, we can continue to talk about my story as we go along here, but for the next several years, I just kept getting sicker until, in 2008, I was diagnosed. That was in 2005. 2008, I was diagnosed with colitis via a colonoscopy, obviously. And then things just trickled from there. So there's the beginning of the story and how this whole journey sort of began.
Wow. So it was a rough road to get you here. Sounds like it was definitely some hard times. And especially, going away to college and having to deal with, symptoms popping up and you're like, what's going on? Must have been really tough. So it's really commendable to hear, you started at this point A where, symptoms trying to, doctors are telling you one thing and you're starting to, it's not helping or things are getting worse. What's going on? And, something that I hear all the time is this frustration that comes with trying to find a diagnosis or figure out like what's going on with me, get the proper treatment for gut conditions, especially those that weren't really addressed or recognized in allopathic traditional medicine or mainstream medicine until recently. Things like leaky gut, Sibo, even Candida. It's common to go from one practitioner to the next and, looking for solutions and coming up misdiagnosed or being told that there was nothing wrong, kind of ping-ponging around trying to just like figure out what's going on with your health. It sounds like you may have run into a bit of that. So is that something you could tell us a bit more about, when you're seeking out for your symptoms? What was that journey like?
Yeah, so I would say after that, and when, I would start to go to the doctor then for more of the stomach stuff and for other things that started to pop up. Like, for instance, I got really bad perioral dermatitis then. I actually had that in high school, but it wasn't until, way years later that I could see that it was actually my gut. But I started having all these problems with my face, with bloating, with gas, with all the things. And doctor after doctor would just tell me it's just IBS. And I absolutely cannot stand that. Number one, because when doctors are telling people that it's just IBS, even if that was the case, that it was just IBS, it is painful and miserable. And there's no place for that word just. And I think it's very disheartening when patients go in and keep getting told that, because I can't tell you the number of times I would just leave crying because I knew deep down, I could feel it. I listened, I knew my body well enough to know that there was something more going on. But number two, it really truly is never just IBS. And while I understand that that is something and an accurate-ish diagnosis that doctors put on it, at the end of the day, it's a syndrome like all other syndromes. It's a classification of symptoms. And so, this is, part of my story that happens later in my life, but my father actually would pass away from colon cancer in 2019. So it's only been a couple of years. And for his entire life, he was told it's just IBS. And so I'm more passionate than ever about not just letting yourself or your clients bounce from doctor to doctor to doctor and being told the same thing when you know that there's something more going on. And I think that as a health coach and as just people in general, there's ways that you can get around that jumping from doctor to doctor. But yeah, that's all I ever heard is it's just IBS. And then, here's the things that you do. They were all masks. They were all Band-Aids. It was drink a bottle of a, magnesium citrate, let it all go through you so that you're not so bloated and distended and you'll be all better, and it was that sort of thing for years upon years.
So kind of just like the quick fix or the Band-Aid. It's fascinating and also just disheartening, like you're saying, just IBS. And the fact that IBS, when you look into it and you see it really is, it's like a catch-all for, kind of like, we don't see anything wrong with you structurally. We don't really know what it is. We're going to label it IBS. And because we don't really know what it is, it's just IBS. It just keeps you going in circles. So that must have been frustrating. What was this turning point where you started to find solutions or, maybe have like an aha moment and feel better?
So I hit absolute complete rock bottom in 2013. This is also part of my business story that it all goes together from 2012 to 2014. So I'll talk about that in a little bit, but basically I hit rock bottom in 2013, as far as my health was concerned. I was so bloated and so miserable, so sick. I had angular cheilitis, the cracks in the corners of your mouth. My perioral dermatitis was everywhere on my face. It was embarrassing to go in public. I was very thin, but I was so bloated and miserable. I was tired. I remember my husband he'd have to like physically take me to bed some nights because I was like, I can't even make it up the stairs. I was too tired. And I just knew that something obviously had to change. And at that point, I had never gone to an alternative or a functional practitioner. I had only ever sought out traditional testing and traditional doctors. And I had a good friend I lived in the Bay Area at the time in California. I had a good friend who told me, I have this doctor. I think that he would really help you. He was in Petaluma and I lived out, in Tracy, California. So it was basically like a 2-hour drive to get to him, but I was desperate. And so this was in late 2013. I felt I had nowhere else to go. I was like, okay, let's just pay all this money to go to a functional practitioner and hope to God he doesn't tell me it's just IBS. And as soon as I went in, I will never forget, as soon as I walked into his office and he took one look at me and he was like, you definitely need like a lot of help. And he sat there with me and he talked to me for a good hour. I was sent home that day with all the testing. Within a month, I returned to his office and he immediately had diagnosed me then with Sibo, which stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. By that time, it was so bad that he also had me do injections of B12 to my stomach. I was diagnosed with a very low functioning thyroid. I was also diagnosed with adrenal fatigue, which we know is a term that we kind of use casually. And I was just really, really in a world of hurt. But from that day, that was my turning point. I was able to, it would take me 4 years to fully heal, but it was completely my turning point.
Wow, it's incredible that should I take this trip out to this doctor, spend this money, especially, when you're feeling so kind of beat up from all these experiences. And, it's really wonderful. I've and this is not to say anything bad about, kind of Western allopathic tradition, mainstream medicine. But, just the functional health movement, kind of looking at the root cause and the gut being at the root. Is really just so eye-opening for so many people. Really starts to really just open up that door, especially if that's something that wasn't in your vocabulary before. So I'm so glad that you had that turning point. So yeah, I mean, what kind of got an idea of what didn't work so well? What did start to work well on this healing journey?
So I think about this a lot. What were the true things? And when I reflect on it, there are some definite things that worked well. And so one thing is that I had to learn, and it took me 4 years to learn this on my journey, but that there was no templated diet that I could follow and that anyone can follow. So I know that it's not just trendy, it's also very scientifically accurate for a lot of people to follow certain gut healing diets, whether it be, the low FODMAP diet or GAPS or SCD or even a vegan, whatever kind of gut healing protocol. Any specific diet to a degree can work. But the problem is when we follow it so religiously because we think it is going to be the end all be all. And I had to learn the hard way that there was just never going to be a diet like that out there for me. And so I joke a lot, but in the beginning of my journey, I followed very stringently the GAPS diet, which stands for gut and psychology syndrome. And so I joke that today I follow the GAPS diet, gut and psychology Sarah, because it's always the healing diet that worked for me is never going to work for anybody else to a T, but there are pieces that can work. You just have to manipulate it and really know your body and listen to your body to decide what pieces you can take and what you need to throw away, and just not to be so, religious to it. Another thing is really doing everything, but tracking nothing. So in the beginning of my journey, I was like, I need to take all the gut healing supplements. I need to do all these diets. I need to do all this stuff. And I did do it all. Whatever my doctor told me to do, I did. And I think that you should do that. I think people should do that as well. However, if you're going to do all the things, you also have to track them, because otherwise you have no idea what's working and what's not working. And so sometimes you can be doing things, they're not even working, but they're costing you a lot of money. Or you're not doing something, you're doing other things that are working, so it's really understanding how to work with your doctor, but also track to know what's truly working for you and what's not. Another thing that I would say is relying on Dr. Google. So everybody wants to do that because it's the fast and easy and cheap thing to do, is to go to Dr. Google. And I'm a huge fan of Dr. Google, believe me, as a beginning point to, look up a few things, to jot down notes. That's fantastic. But what happened to me in the beginning, and what I think happens to a lot of people, is that they go to Dr. Google, they find 3 symptoms that they have, when these symptoms can probably belong to 8 different digestive conditions. They diagnose themselves with something, then they figure out from Dr. Google what supplement goes, and so it's this trickle effect, when the reality is that if that's not really what's going on with you, if you haven't tested to know for sure, you could be doing more harm in the long run, which I definitely did in the beginning of my journey. So, those are some of the things that I would, just some general advice for helping yourself, or helping other people, helping your clients, helping your loved ones.
Yeah, those are great tips. And I love how all of those kind of really at the core go back to that bio-individuality, that everything isn't so cut and dry, this condition, that symptom, this supplement, and that we all have so many factors that make us unique. I loved how your spin on the GAPS diet. I know, like, my husband went through something recently himself, where he was on a very strict elimination diet and found that, some things that were supposed to be, bad actually worked better, and other things that seemed to be good, didn't do so well. And so I love, I think it's such an important point to explore. And I love that IIN is all about this, and about that bio-individuality, to really look at, that there's helpful resources, like you said, online, but there's no cheat sheet for, like, this is how you improve your gut health. It's kind of more of a guide to, like, this is how you learn to know your body. This is how you experiment. This is how you do all these things to really become, like, you are your own first client. So, speaking of, what brought you to IIN? I know that you are a grad of the health coach training program. When you enrolled, was your goal at the time to be a health coach, or was this part of your personal healing journey? Both?
It was both. I mean, it's really interesting when I look back, because I was very obsessed, as I think many women who end up having a lot of gut issues, and what I have found in my research and in my practice and everything that I've done, is I was really obsessed with food and nutrition. And so I wanted to learn more about it in general, but I never expected to learn the things that I ended up learning, in the sense that, when you're younger, or you're looking more at mainstream thoughts and ideas around food and nutrition, it's like, how can I eat less to become more? How can I manipulate in order, for some kind of aesthetic achievement? And so I was always really interested in food and nutrition from that aspect. And I thought, I was healthy-ish, right? I liked learning about food, and I liked being active. And so I wanted to share that passion with other people. So I thought, if I can go to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, I can maybe learn more about self-healing, but also a way for me to possibly build a business to help other women on a health-focused journey. But obviously things turned out very different. But yeah, so that's why I went to the school to begin with.
Very cool. I love how so many of us come for the nutrition. You kind of come for the secondary food and leave with the primary food, and realize that there's so much more, and that there's just the whole picture of healing, and that process of learning and growing. Okay. So fast forward, you went to IIN, became a health coach, and here you are now, years later with your own successful business, A Gutsy Girl, doing so much more than that. So tell us a bit about how you got started with your business and how that developed.
Okay, so like I had mentioned earlier, 2012 to 2014 is when I hit rock bottom with my health, also with my personal life, with all the things. But also, and this is, part of my mantra and what I believe in life is that, beautiful things can come when it's ready and when it's supposed to happen. So 2012, I register and I enroll at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. Yes, that makes me old. And I took the class like forever ago. But I graduated and went to school in 2012. 2012 also, I don't know if I think it was probably right after I graduated, somewhere around there. We had tried to get pregnant for like 5 years. It wasn't happening. Long story short, I did a culmination of an IVF cycle, which was for me a horrible decision given all of my health issues at the time, but I did it anyways. And it was a failed cycle that landed me in the ER. I was very sick. It was devastating physically, emotionally, and it set me back on my healing journey, which is why I think I hit rock bottom in 2013 because of all the drugs and the hormones and all the things I had to do to try to get pregnant. So there I am in the hospital and I was like, what's going to happen next? Like I really didn't have any desire for much of anything. So my husband said, let's go to Sedona and take a vacation and just totally whatever. At the time when I had started the school, I was blogging on a blogger.com platform and it was called some ridiculous name like the journey of a misfortunate fitness foodie junkie or something like that. So there I am in Sedona, super sad and depressed. And I remember I get up real early one morning and I was on my computer and I was talking to he's a super talented website designer in the space. And I was talking to him on chat and I was like, I think I just need a new outlet. I need something for myself. I need to focus in a new place. And I really want to talk about women's issues that women aren't talking about, which are gut issues and infertility. And I'm not afraid to talk about them. And I just need a place to be able to do it. So I kept telling them, okay, so let's move my website over to another URL and let's call it something like, apples are good, or it was something super basic. I don't remember what, but my idea was something very basic. And he said to me, no, I think that you're super gutsy and that's what you're going to be talking about. And it's a perfect play on the gut. So how about you be thegutsygirl.com? And I was like, perfect. Well, it was taken. So anyways, A Gutsy Girl was open and we bought it that day. That happened in 2012, 13-ish. I bought AGUTSYGIRL.com. I started everything there, kept moving forward. 2013 happened, hit rock bottom. And then in 2014, I really started on my journey towards healing and I got really serious about all things gut, learning, research, and being in this space on this domain and sharing with the world everything that I could.
Quite the journey. Some amazing work that you do. Really, women need these voices and this encouragement and this information. So would love to know a bit more about how you help others through this work that you do.
So from 2014 to 2018, I would say I was really personally doing a lot of the work, but I really continued to use the platform as a way to share my own stories and to connect with other people. And I would do a little bit of health coaching here and there, but nothing was really that specific. I wasn't afraid to share things, but I wasn't necessarily branded in any sort of gut health. It was mostly just branding myself as I will talk about anything as it relates to gut health, colitis, Sibo, women, and infertility. But then, and this is one of the biggest pieces of advice I give to anybody who is wanting to start a health coaching practice, whether it's in person or online, is to get really, really clear and specific about who you're talking to, why you're talking to them, where your passions lie, and just focus in there as much as possible. I can't tell you how many times a man has said to me, I think you need to be talking to men too. And I'm like, and I've stayed very true to myself and to my brand and to what I'm doing. So in 2018-ish, that's all I did, is I focused only on the gut, everything about the gut as it relates to women. So what I do on AGUTSYGIRL.com, through the website, through my Instagram, my podcast, my YouTube channel, everything that I do is I try to take complex information and put it into digestible chunks so that anyone can benefit from it at any given, in whatever space or platform works best for them, whether it's audio or video or just simple graphics. That is the bulk of what I do and what I try to do. And that's just stuff that people can get all the time. I also, then as you had mentioned earlier, I spend a ton of time creating free resources, but also my ebooks, the book, courses, other downloadable PDFs, anything. I really listen to what people are saying that they need. Like just recently, I found a huge new place that people are just really desperate for information. And that's all around, how to know what testing to ask for, how to even, and it's something that I teach and I talk about a lot, but once you get so far on your journey, you almost forget what the beginning is like. And you forget, like, okay, well, before I even go to the doctor, maybe I should know X, Y, and Z and learn about this so that when I get to my doctor's appointment, I am equipped with the questions that I'm asking. And I think that this is something that, as health coaches, something that is so critical. I mean, we can't give anyone a diagnosis. We can't, do a colonoscopy, but you can help them prepare for those appointments, ask the right questions so that they're not bouncing from doctor to doctor and leaving feeling like defeated. And so that's really what I focus on every single day, is empowering people with education, information, and the necessary tools to be able to heal at a far faster pace than I did.
That's so awesome. And I love all of that. Guys, you really should check out Sarah's website, her social media. I can't tell you how many things I've bookmarked off of your Instagram page where I'm like, this is just an amazing resource. And really that digestibility of like, it's like when it's a little like infographic or something where it's like, because it's such a big topic to be able to really assimilate all this information. And I really love what you were just saying about the education and the empowerment, because it really kind of like, I feel like that's where I wanted to go with this next is I wanted to be sure that we had some time to take some questions from our participants here today. And I did see there was a great question from Stacy. And by the way, if you have any questions for Sarah, please go ahead and type them now while you're listening. But I saw a great question from Stacy that came in a little while ago about, she says, with all of this knowledge, how can it be used when working with a client without working outside of your scope of practice? And I think you really just hit the nail on the head right there, where it's not diagnosing or treating or, telling clients what to do, but it's helping them facilitate that journey by giving them all of that.
Yeah. And the other thing I'd say to you, Stacy, too, is that, like everybody else, I feel like we can get criticized more for things, but the key is really making your clients and other actual medical practitioners know that we are trying to work with you to make your jobs easier. And so one thing that I did, because I started to see this, and actually, to be honest, started to get a little bit nervous about it, but so I created that journal, the 90-day gut healing journey journal, and practitioners love it because I then can coach my clients and how to use the journal. There's nothing medical about that. It is about teaching people how to track the foods they're eating, track the things that they're doing or not doing, the supplements, the medications, the sleeping. That, I mean, in my journal, I have everything from tracking your bowel movements. I have the whole Bristol stool scale there, everything. Teaching people how to listen to themselves and to take accountability for the things that they are or are not doing. And then being able to have this huge compilation of information to hand off to a professional. And it keeps your hands clean of things, but it is so empowering for them.
Yes. Really well said. So I've just been kind of scrolling through here, seeing what questions are coming up. And again, we have a few minutes here for Sarah to answer the questions that you have. So definitely encourage you to take advantage and go ahead and type in that Q&A, anything that you are wondering that, is in the realm of this call. Questions about, I don't know, Brooke is asking if you're able to share the doctor you saw up in Petaluma. I don't know if that's something.
Yeah, he's not in Petaluma anymore, but I think he still actually works with Chris Kresser, but it's Dr. Sanjay Schweig, Schweig. I believe he's in Berkeley now. He might still be at the California Institute for Functional Medicine, but I'm not sure. And I also know that you have to see him in person now. He doesn't do anything virtually. He's so busy.
Thank you for sharing that. I see an interesting question here from Sally. Is there a vegan alternative to bone broth? I think that's a question that I hear a lot, because we know that bone broth is so nourishing for the gut lining, but not everyone, a lot of people eat a plant-based diet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a huge question I get. I actually have a recipe for my Instant Pot vegetable broth. It's not bone broth, obviously, but I feel like there are some manufacturers now that make it. I feel like I just recently saw one. But besides that, I think it's just important to ask yourself really why you want it. If it is coming down to the bone and you have research and that's why, there's not an easy answer to it. However, I will say that if you are making your vegetable broth and you are putting in all the vegetables and the herbs and the spices, you are getting so many awesome gut healing benefits. In the beginning of my journey, I lived on meat, fat, and broth. And today I am polar opposite. I eat anything and everything today because I have zero intolerances to anything. But I would say that my body and what I know based on my research is far more conducive to eating all of the veggies these days. So that's my best advice I can give, probably, is just to not try to find an alternative and to try to make it as nourishing for your gut as possible, which would most likely mean adding more herbs and spices to it.
Good suggestions. Seeing a few questions coming in around your journal, and if that's something that is out, and where can folks get that?
Yeah, it is. It's just under the journal tab on my website. But I also made it so I have a printed version of it that's obviously not super cheap, but I also have the e-version of it, which is just a PDF download. It's half the price, and I teach you how to use it. It's so easy to use, and yeah, it's right on. And you know what, honestly, like, it's something, because I do believe in it as a tool for health coaches. You can use it with your clients too. So it's easy. It's a really beneficial tool.
Cool. Yeah, I've taken a look at it. It looks really awesome. So if anyone's interested, definitely check that out. Try to squeeze in one or two more questions quickly. I see one that came in here. This is a good one. So, question about, is there a specific therapy that works for Sibo, or is this something that's individualized? And also what works for you?
Yep, it's going to be completely 100% individualized. And I know people hate that answer, but it is the absolute truth. So Sibo is very, very, very complex. I relapsed from it 4 times because it is such a beast to overcome. Everyone thinks that bacteria is such a bad thing. It's not. It's just the amount that we have in the digestive tract, and you should not have so much in the small intestine. That's when the problem occurs. However, the problem with Sibo is that there's methane dominant, there's hydrogen dominant, and there's also this H2 one, which would produce that rotten egg stench. So the protocols, depending on which one you have, are going to be very different. And I really, really, really tried to do no antibiotics for it, but because I was so far gone, I can guarantee I had it since my freshman year of college. So far gone, I had to use medications. And even that gets complex because if you do certain medications for methane dominant and certain for hydrogen dominant. As far as the diet is concerned, I know that it's very, very popular and trendy to say, do low FODMAP, do it harder, do it better, and you'll get better. And the truth is that that's usually not the truth. In fact, I wrote a whole ebook called Reasonable Sibo, and it's all because the reason I wrote it was because you can look and you can say, okay, garlic is high FODMAP. Even though that is the truth, but there's a lot of foods that are high FODMAP, but only if you eat like 2 cups. And so what I found was that too many people were excluding every single food on the planet, and they didn't really need to be. And the truth is that a lot of high FODMAP foods are actually super nourishing and good for the gut. So I always make it my goal. And I think as a health coach, it's our responsibility to make it our health goal. How can we eat as many foods as possible and still be able to heal? And so there's this threshold when you talk about FODMAPs and the low FODMAP diet where, okay, so if you can't have a half cup of blueberries, have a 1/3 cup and you'd be just fine. And then you're eating more and you're still getting a diverse, your microbiome needs diversity too. So that's why I'm saying it's so individualized. There's just so many different pieces to the Sibo puzzle.